I spent too long trying to please others. If you enjoyed the content, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It truly helps the channel grow and continue to create contents like this. The first time I remember trying to please someone, I couldn't have been more than 6. I had spilled a glass of milk at the table, and my father's face tightened, just for a moment, just enough to teach me something. Not, be careful. Something deeper. Something that sunk into my bones like a nail. Approval can be taken away. So I learned early how to keep it. I learned to read a room the way some children learn to read books. I could tell when an adult was annoyed before they spoke. I could tell what tone would calm them, what answer would make them nod, what version of me would fit the shape they wanted. People call that being mature. I called it survival. But survival habits have a way of following you into places they don't belong. They follow you into friendships, marriages, workplaces. They turn you into someone who is always adjusting, always smoothing, always performing. And then one day, if you're lucky, you wake up and realize you've been living as a mirror. At 90, I can say the sentence I wish I'd said much earlier. I spent too long trying to please others. Not because kindness is bad. Kindness is good. Not because consideration is wrong. Consideration is noble. But there's a difference between generosity and disappearing. People-pleasing isn't kindness. It's fear with good manners. It's the fear of being disliked. The fear of disappointing. The fear of conflict. The fear of not being needed. The fear that if you stop performing, someone will stop loving you. And when you live like that, your life starts to belong to everyone but you. I want to tell you about a moment that still makes my throat tighten. I was 22, standing in a small church basement with fluorescent lights that made everyone look a little tired. A man from my community was shaking my hand and telling me what a promising young person I was. He said, "We need more people like you. You're going places." I should have felt proud. Instead, I felt trapped, and I didn't understand why. Because what he meant was, don't change. Don't disappoint us. Carry our hopes. Be the version of you we already decided to admire. I smiled. I thanked him. I promised things I hadn't actually chosen. And that's how it starts. Not with a dramatic betrayal of yourself. With small agreements. With, "Sure, I can do that." With, "It's fine." With, "I don't mind." With, "Whatever you think." The problem is your whatever you think becomes your life. For years I wore the mask of being easy. The reliable one. The helpful one. The one who never caused trouble. I said yes when I meant maybe. I smiled when I felt hurt. I laughed at jokes that made me uncomfortable. I accepted invitations when my body wanted rest. I stayed quiet when something mattered to me. And people loved me for it. That's the twisted reward. People-pleasing often works. You become liked. You become praised. You become depended on. You become the person everyone says is so nice. But inside, you start to feel strangely lonely, because no one is actually loving you. They're loving the version of you that keeps them comfortable. I didn't realize that until my late 40s. My life looked good from the outside. Stable job, respectable image, the kind of life that makes relatives stop asking questions. But I remember sitting in my car after a family gathering, hands on the steering wheel, breathing hard as if I'd been running. Not from stress in the usual sense, from exhaustion. The exhaustion of being on all the time. I had just spent 3 hours being agreeable. Laughing at things I didn't find funny. Saying polite phrases like, "Oh, it's no trouble," when it absolutely was trouble. Listening to advice I didn't ask for and nodding like it was wisdom. On the drive home, I pulled over and just sat there. I remember the street light making a pale circle on the windshield. And I had a thought that felt dangerous. What would it feel like to be honest? That's when I understood what people-pleasing costs. It costs truth. It costs intimacy. Because intimacy requires honesty, and honesty risks displeasing someone. People-pleasing is the art of avoiding that risk. And the price is a life where you are always near people, but not fully known. Social pressure makes it worse. We're trained to chase certain milestones, certain images, certain roles: the good son, the good daughter, the successful professional, the perfect parent, the neighbor who never says no, the friend who always shows up. You can do all of that and still feel like your life is not yours. I remember my friend Elaine in her 60s. She finally left a career she hated. Everyone was shocked. "But you're so good at it," they said. "But you've been there forever," they said. "But what will people think?" They said it like people was a jury. Like people was a god. Elaine looked at them and said, "People aren't the ones living in my body." That sentence is freedom. It's easy to live by expectations that aren't truly yours because they come wrapped in praise. Society doesn't usually pressure you with threats. It pressures you with compliments. "You're so responsible. You're so helpful. You're such a good worker. You're so easy to be around." Sometimes those compliments are cages. I want to be careful here, because some listeners might hear this and swing too far the other way. They might think the lesson is, don't care what anyone thinks. That's not what I mean. Humans are wired for connection. We're not meant to live like islands. The lesson is, care about what matters, and stop buying love with self-erasure. There's a difference between someone being disappointed in you and someone rejecting you. People pleasers treat disappointment like death. They'll do anything to avoid it. But disappointment is survivable. It's sometimes necessary. It's often the price of becoming real. I learned this in a small moment with my daughter. She was 16, full of strong opinions and fire. She wanted to do something I didn't agree with at the time, nothing terrible, just a plan that felt risky to me. I tried to control it with gentle words, the way people pleasers control things. I didn't want conflict, so I tried to steer her without saying what I really felt. She looked at me and said, "Say what you mean." I was startled. I said, "I don't want to upset you." She rolled her eyes and said, "I'm already upset. At least be honest." That's the gift of people who love you. They want the real you, not the polished you. I wish I'd learned sooner that honesty creates cleaner pain. People-pleasing creates chronic pain. One argument might sting, but years of silence rot you slowly. So how do you stop? Not in theory. In real life. You start by noticing the moments when you abandon yourself. The moments when you say yes but your stomach drops. The moments when you laugh but something inside you goes quiet. The moments when you apologize for taking up space. The moments when you over-explain because you fear being misunderstood. The moments when you rehearse your message 10 times so no one feels uncomfortable. Those are the moments you begin to reclaim. Not with cruelty. With calm. With boundaries. A boundary is not a wall. It's a door with a lock. It means you decide what enters your life and what doesn't. It means you stop handing out keys to everyone who asks. I used to believe boundaries were selfish. Now I believe boundaries are how you stay kind without resentful exhaustion. In the next part, I'm going to tell you about the first time I said no and didn't collapse from guilt, how that single no changed the way people treated me, and more importantly, how it changed the way I treated myself. Before I learned to say no, I thought no was a weapon. I thought it would hurt people, disappoint people, cause someone to withdraw love. But no, when said gently, is simply honesty. It's a statement of reality. And reality is not rude. The first time I practiced it, I was invited to a gathering I didn't want to attend. My body was tired, my heart wanted quiet, and the old me would have gone anyway and smiled through it and come home bitter. Instead, I took a breath and said, "Thank you, but I can't make it." There was a pause. The world didn't end. No lightning. No dramatic rejection. Just, "Oh, okay. Maybe next time." I sat at home that evening, and the most surprising thing happened. I felt peaceful. Peaceful. Like I'd returned a borrowed coat. That peace was my body telling me the truth. You were never meant to carry everyone's expectations. That's when I started learning the difference between being loved and being used. The people who truly love you will adjust. The people who only love your compliance will protest. And that protest is information. That single no I mentioned didn't just change my schedule. It changed my identity. For most of my life, I had believed my value came from being easy, from being helpful, from being agreeable. When you live that way, you become a kind of emotional employee, always on call, always smoothing, always managing other people's comfort like it's your responsibility. So when I started saying no, I felt guilty at first. I felt like I was breaking a sacred rule. The guilt was loud, dramatic, theatrical. It told me I was selfish, unkind, ungrateful. But guilt is often just the sound of an old pattern dying. I remember being invited to take on an extra project at work, something outside my role. The boss praised me before I even answered. "You're the only one I trust with this," he said. My chest filled with that familiar blend of pride and dread. Pride because I was being chosen. Dread because I was already stretched thin. The old me would have said yes automatically. I would have tried to prove I could handle it. I would have stayed late, skipped meals, snapped at my family without meaning to, and then blamed myself for not being better. Instead, I said, "I appreciate the confidence, but I can't take that on right now without dropping something important." My boss stared at me like I'd spoken a new language. Then he said, "What do you mean?" And I said something that felt terrifying, because it was so direct. "I mean, I can do my current work well, or I can do this extra thing, but I can't do both well. I'm choosing quality." There was another pause. Then he nodded slowly, as if he was recalculating his map of me. "Okay," he said. "We'll find someone else." I walked back to my desk and my hands were shaking. Not because something bad happened, because something good did. I had protected my life. And I wasn't used to that. People pleasers are often afraid that boundaries will make them unlovable. But the opposite is often true. Boundaries make you clearer. They make your yes meaningful. They make your presence genuine. And they filter out the relationships that depended on your silence. Here's what I learned: some people will be unhappy when you stop pleasing them. That doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means the relationship was built on a bargain you never agreed to consciously. I'll keep you comfortable, and you'll keep me included. When you break that bargain, the other person may call you selfish. But sometimes, selfish is what people call you when you stop being available for their convenience. I had to learn to tolerate that discomfort. Because it is uncomfortable. If you've spent a lifetime managing reactions, you feel naked when you stop. Your nervous system expects punishment. It expects rejection. So you have to teach your nervous system a new truth: I can survive someone being disappointed in me. Disappointment is not a disaster. It's a feeling. And feelings pass. There's another layer to this. People-pleasing often comes from wanting to be seen as good. Not just liked. Good. And that's a noble desire, but it becomes dangerous when you confuse goodness with compliance. Goodness doesn't mean you never upset anyone. Goodness means you are honest and kind, even when honesty creates friction. Goodness means you stop lying with your smiles. I think about all the ways I lived by expectations that weren't truly mine. I chased certain milestones because I thought I was supposed to. I stayed in roles longer than I should have because I didn't want to disappoint. I dressed a certain way, spoke a certain way, avoided certain conversations, not because it was true to me, but because it fit the script. And here's the painful part: the script changes. Society's expectations move like fashion. The people who pressured you may not even remember what they pressured you into. But you will live with the consequences in your body. So the question becomes, whose approval are you buying, and what are you paying with? If you're paying with your peace, it's too expensive. If you're paying with your health, it's too expensive. If you're paying with your family's attention, it's too expensive. If you're paying with your own truth, it's too expensive. One of the clearest memories I have is from my mother's final year. She was sitting at her kitchen table, folding napkins as if the world still needed to be neat. I asked her if she was happy. She sighed and said, I tried to do everything right. I said, did it work? She looked up, eyes watery, and said, I don't know if it was ever my life. That sentence haunted me. Because it's possible to live a good life and still feel like a guest in it. So I started practicing a different question whenever I felt the pull to please. Is this request aligned with my values, or with someone else's comfort? If it was aligned with my values, helping a friend in need, supporting my family, being generous, then yes. Gladly. But if it was only about avoiding someone's discomfort, about keeping the image of me intact, then I paused. I learned that a pause is powerful. You don't have to answer immediately. People pleasers answer immediately because silence feels dangerous. But silence is not dangerous, it's space. And in that space you can ask, what do I actually want? That question is hard if you've ignored it for decades. At first, you might not know. You might feel blank. That's normal. If you've been living for others, your desires get quiet. So you start with small truths. Small wants. I want rest tonight. I want to say no. I want to wear what feels like me. I want to stop apologizing for taking up space. I want to spend time with people who don't require me to perform. Those small truths are the beginning of a life that belongs to you. There's a beautiful side effect, too. When you stop people-pleasing, you give others permission to be honest. Relationships become more real. Conflicts become cleaner. The air clears. You stop resenting people for asking, because you learn you can answer truthfully. And you start noticing something else. Some people don't actually need you to please them. They just need you to be present. They need you to show up without the mask. Those relationships deepen. They become places where you can breathe. I learned that with my wife. For years I tried to keep her happy by being agreeable, by avoiding disagreements, by smoothing tension before it could become a conversation. One night she looked at me and said, I don't want a polite roommate. I want a partner. That was a hard thing to hear. But it was also an invitation to be real. When I started speaking my truth, gently, imperfectly, we fought sometimes. But the fights were honest. And after, we felt closer. Because intimacy isn't built by never disagreeing. It's built by staying connected through disagreement. If you're listening and you're tired, I want you to hear this. You can stop. You can stop performing. You can stop explaining yourself into exhaustion. You can stop earning love by overgiving. You can stop living by a script you didn't write. Start with one boundary. One truthful sentence. One no. One pause. One choice that honors your life. And when guilt rises, remember, guilt is not always a sign you're doing something wrong. Sometimes it's a sign you're doing something new. At my age, I don't have much interest in being admired. Admiration is thin. It evaporates. What I want is to be known by a few people, and to know myself. If I could speak to my younger self, I'd tell him, stop trying to be the version of you that makes everyone comfortable. Be the version of you that is true. The right people will stay. Some won't. And that's okay. Because the biggest regret isn't that someone was disappointed in you. The biggest regret is waking up late in life and realizing you spent decades editing yourself for an audience that wasn't even watching as closely as you thought. Your life is not a performance. It's a home. Live in it. Take up space. Speak honestly. Love fully. And let the people who love the real you find you. That's where freedom starts.